You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky, going to dive into some free agent stuff today, Andy, looking at their own guys. We're going to talk about THT. We might try to get into some gimmickry that the NBA is doing to try to look dredging back up to try to make a little bit more money for themselves.
You and I both, Brian, love a good gimmick, but this one might be a little too ridiculous for either one of us.
There are very few people, I think, in the world who enjoy gimmicks more than me.
Oh, yeah. No,
I'm very pro gimmick.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to food. We could do a whole episode on that and might have to, given the length of the offseason and my love for gimmicky foods. But let's start with this. So I will actually tell people first that Locked On Lakers today brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Download the app and join us at a special time this week, 11 a.m. Pacific. Again, 11 a.m. Pacific to get in on the action, Spotify Green Room. So I did the Lakers TV station studio show on Monday night, and something that both of us relatively frequently appear on if you're in LA, and you can check that out. They asked me the question, rank, like looking at the Lakers, they listed all the Lakers free agents from, Andre Drummond to Ben McLemore to Wes Matthews to Markieff Morris and whatever. And I had to say my top three, the three that I thought were the most important to re-sign. I think we can all agree that the answer is some combination of Alex Caruso, Talen Horton-Tucker, and Dennis Schröder. Like that, I think, is the correct answer of people. Here's the order that I put them in terms of priority. And I was thinking just about next year.
Right.
THT number 3, Alex Caruso number 2, Dennis Schröder number 1. Did I do it correctly?
I would actually put Caruso ahead of Schroeder. I think the best argument.
Interesting. So you would make Caruso the top priority for the Lakers to get back.
Yes.
That's interesting. Explain.
I think Caruso is the best fit of the three, and I think he has consistently proven himself to be the most important in terms of his defensive versatility, the way that he fits so incredibly well, not just with LeBron, but with LeBron and AD. He is really good with both of those guys, and the things that he does in terms of allowing what they are elite at defensively continue, I think is extremely important for the Lakers. In some ways, I think Schroeder becomes just as important when you start thinking about the price point. And, and all of these things obviously matter. But when you think about the price point and you also think about the draft capital that they gave up with the Danny Green deal in order to bring Schroeder in there, and how little draft capital they have because of everything they gave up in the Anthony Davis deal.
All the things that they're going to give up to get Lillard. I mean, you have to factor that in too.
Well, no, actually, it's not going to be that much. They don't have anything. So they're going to actually manage to get Damian Lillard in what is essentially a salary dump, which will be, by the way, guarantee Rob Pelinka wins GM of the Exec of the Year that year. I don't care how much resentment there is.
No, that's a pretty sweet move.
Yeah, it really is. By the way,
that's what I love about all of these hypothetical trades when people say, like, who says no? I mean, the answer is never the Lakers.
No.
Who said not the Lakers? It's a great deal for the Lakers.
Oh, no. On Twitter, everybody suggests incredible deals for the Lakers. Speaking about Schroeder, though, and, the price point for him moving forward, and, the way the Lakers are in some ways boxed in with the guy, because they're going to have no real ability to replace him outside of internal improvement from Caruso or THT. There was a report today from talkbasketball.net, which I did not realize existed until this day. Dennis Schröder, as it turns out, wants der Tasche, which is German for the bag. I'm reading, Dennis Schröder will test free agency as an unrestricted free agent after his 4-year contract expires this summer. Earlier this season, he turned down an $84 million offer from the Los Angeles Lakers. According to Armin Andres, vice president of German Basketball Federation, DBB, the point guard is expecting a deal in the range of 100 to 120 million. Andres mentioned this fact as it is the reason why Schroder is not representing Germany this summer, as the burden of ensuring his future contract of that value is too big on DBB. Quote, Dennis Schröder has communicated this clearly. He wants 100, 120 million, which he will probably also get. And this sum ensured that he cannot.
We cannot insure him for that much money. It is too much of the monies for us to insure him at that price point. It's as if you've been transported to Berlin.
Yeah, it really it's
okay, but like let's.
By the way,
yes.
what's German for F out of here? Like
I don't know.
120 million F out of here.
What's
man.
the bag in German? Der Tasche. I also want der Tasche. Let's stick on that for a second, because the point that you're making about Schroeder and the ability to replace him is why I actually put him above the other two. So we'll get to THT in a season in the deep dive as well, but let's stick on this and talk about Schroeder next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Spotify Green Room, the first social audio platform made for sports fans. This app is free to download. Once you're in, you can talk with me, Brian, other fans, athletes, insiders in real time about your favorite team or sport. Obviously, in this case, the Lakers. We will be hosting rooms for Locked On Lakers once a week. It's always on Fridays, but this week it's going to be a special time, 11 a.m. Pacific. You can join in the conversation that you listen to here every day. Spotify Green Room, the perfect place to start or join conversations about the NBA. You'll find fans just like you on Spotify Green Room for parties, debates, post-game breakdowns, and reacting to big news, rumors. Go and download the free Spotify Green Room app now, currently available on all iOS devices. Create a profile, link to your Twitter, join the group for the latest league updates. Follow us at Cam Brothers to be notified when the room goes live. It's always under A. Kamenetsky. Again, this week's special time on Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. We want to hear everybody's thoughts. The room has been awesome. People chiming in. It's really, really fun. So again, Spotify Green Room, changing the way we talk sports.
Yes, this week we'll be talking a lot about Der Tasche.
Der Tasche.
But here's why I put Schroeder at the top of this list. And we're going to talk about THT in a lot of depth anyway, so we'll get there. And you talk about the money and 120. I don't know if he's going to get between 100 and 120 million. The answer is no if you don't ask. I mean, go out there and try to get it and see what people give you. But I do think it's almost certain that he's going to get more money than at least Laker fans are comfortable with, and probably that the Lakers are comfortable giving him. But that inability to replace him is what changes the nature of this. And by the way, my answer when I was on TV to this was they really do need to re-sign all three. But to try to treat this as individuals, the problem with letting Schroeder go is, for all the frustration that Lakers fans had with him, he's a good player.
He's a good player.
And particularly when guys were out, and he had stretches where he played extremely well. I know he was disappointing in the playoffs. He was up and down. It was not consistent. But if you think that he's talked about in his exit interviews, is a guy who can be better next year, feel more comfortable, it's a normal season, all that stuff, then he's better than virtually any free agent you're going to find out there. If you don't like Dennis Schroeder's inefficiency from three-point range, you're not going to like what Spencer Dinwiddie does for you either. So there's a lot of that going on. And if you let Schroeder go and want somebody of a decent caliber, now you have to use your exception, whatever the largest exception the Lakers end up with, that taxpayer exception, to sign a replacement. Or you have to use trade capital, or you have to use something. And so not only did you let the good player go, you have to use limited capital that you have to try to replace that player.
Yeah, for people
that is a player that can't be then used to improve the roster.
Well, I mean, for people who may not be aware of this, the Lakers, if they let Schroeder walk, they are not going to gain massive cap space.
You don't get to spend 18, 20, $22 million on a different player.
Right. They are in a lot of ways dealing with what people refer to as the bird rights trap, where on one hand, you get the ability to re-sign a guy, go over the cap using his bird rights. But the flip side of it is depending on the situation with the team, and if those bird rights were really that important, it speaks to being stuck. And
Right.
they're not in a great place with Schroder. The one thing that I would hope could potentially happen with him, and this is something I've talked about a lot, is if he is signed to a longer term deal and they've got him locked up and he's got, a number that, as he always says, is fair. Schroeder's always just looking for a fair deal. He will remind you of that at least every other day. When asked,
he wants a fair Tache. Doesn't have to be a Bergen Tache, just a fair one.
No, I think they are one and the same in Dennis Schroeder's mind. I think you can define der Tache.
Even a small Tache will buy you a fair amount of Bergen bags.
I think you
can
define der Tache about 25 different ways, and they're all going to look the same. It's going to be the same damn bag either way. Yeah, and it's going to be an expensive bag. But what I'm hoping is that they get more flexibility in the way that they can actually use Schroeder, because I think he is better suited for both himself as a player, but also for the Lakers to be coming off the bench. I think playing a full year as a starter at times showcased things that he did well. At times, I think showcased some weaknesses. Either way, I don't think it was necessarily always to the betterment of the team. And, without having to worry about whether or not starting hurts him on the open market, maybe there's more flexibility that way because, he came out of the gate saying that he wanted to start. The one thing, though, I think the Lakers do need to be careful about is they can't allow themselves to hit a number that they truly know is ridiculous simply because they feel like they're pop committed. Like at some point, you just say, well, you know what? We'll figure out another way.
Right, sure. And you don't want to do something really stupid, but this is why, this question of money is so intriguing, because regardless of how the Lakers do it, they're going to have to spend deep into the luxury tax. And the question really becomes how deep, how much money are they willing to spend to keep the roster around LeBron and AD? Because, they've always spent money in the past. And Rob Pelinka said that they have free reign to spend what they need to spend now. It probably helps them that they just, set up a deal where, the sale of the team for $3 billion, as Phil Anschutz sells as 27%, which means the team is valued around $5 billion. That might make them feel a little more comfortable spending a little extra money.
I'll tell you this much. If Schroeder ultimately gets the ultimate Tache and gets his $120 million that his friend
he's not getting that.
Well, I'm just saying, if he gets somewhere between the 100 to 120 that his buddy over with the German Basketball Federation says that he wants, if I'm Rob Pelinka, I'm saying your ass is getting vaccinated right now.
Right now.
Like right now. Like before you sign this contract, here's a syringe. Yeah, here is a syringe, and we are putting this syringe in your arm for 100
Not only that,
we're
giving you the booster at the same time.
Yeah, seriously. We're giving you all the vaccines right now.
Right. I think that because
I don't think that's too much to ask.
No, I agree.
I don't think for 120 million, your ass is getting.
You're getting all of it. You're getting all of it. He's not going to get that much money.
I believe in freedom, but only to a point.
The frustration with him is just that he didn't do what fans wanted to, but he's not terrible, and he wasn't terrible this year. He had a couple, and he had a couple terrible games in the playoffs. Let's look at the THT and Caruso part of it, and then we'll dive into THT and get to the revenue thing if the gimmickry if we can before the end of the show. So here's why I put Caruso in front of THT. It's not because I think Caruso has more upside than THT. He clearly doesn't.
Absolutely not.
But I just lived through a pandemic. I'm still living through a pandemic. I'm all about next season. And if the question, as I interpret it, was just for next year, who matters more, I think the answer is still going to be Alex Caruso.
Yeah, and I had him number one. So
I know.
Really, I agree with you.
So I think that where you put Caruso, very difficult to project both how much money he's going to make, because he really isn't an offensive weapon. And I think at this point he's old enough now and has been in the league long enough that he kind of is what he is offensively. He could improve a little bit. The shooting percentages could go, but he's not going to morph into He's not going to have one of these like sort of Kyle Lowry renaissances where like, or whatever. I think he's fairly established at what he is. What he is has a tremendous value to the Lakers. The thing about THT, though, as we seg into him, he's 2 or 3 years younger still than some of the guys that they're going to be looking to draft at 22.
THT
this year,
as a reference point, turns 21 this November.
Right.
21.
That's this November. Like,
Yes.
What's his name? Chris Duarte, I think, is from, or you guys are going to learn. And we'll have people on and we'll make sure the coverage is really good. Andy and I know literally nothing about college basketball. If you played, other than like, Cade Cunningham and a couple of these dudes that you just sort of pick up by osmosis, if you played a game with us where half of them were real players and half of them were people you made up, we'd probably lose. Like, is this a real college basketball player? But like, Chris Duarte is somebody that I've been reading about. You have too, Andy, in these mock drafts. He's 24.
Yeah.
He's 4 years older, and he's in the draft this year. That's how young THT is as a 2-year veteran. So if you're looking long-term, I think you mentioned it before, he has tremendous potential value to the Lakers, given where they are and all those financial things that we were just talking about. So I put him at number 3, but he's potentially critically important. And like you mentioned and have mentioned, I think will in the next segment, is one of the only guys that has transformative potential for this roster. We'll talk about that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. These are bars covered in 100% chocolate, soft, easy to chew. They are healthy. They're great for health conscious people, whether you're trying to lose weight, but you still want something that tastes awesome. They're low calorie, they're low sugar, high protein, high fiber, great for people on a keto diet, great for people working out. Brian, I was very excited today. I did 30 minutes of jumping on our trampoline in the backyard, got a little bit of exercise in, and you finish that thing off with a Built Bar, and they're more delicious than ever before now. They got 12 original flavors like raspberry, coconut almond, salted caramel, banana bread, new flavors like cherry barcia, lemon almond cheesecake, cookies and cream. They're perfect for somebody like me, a trampoline jumper, who also loves. There's a specific bar. I believe it's a lemon almond cheesecake that is specifically.
I know you guys have been looking for a bar that really meets your needs for a while. I'm glad you found it.
The Built Bar people don't talk about this a lot, and it may be because it's not accurate. But the lemon almond cheesecake is specifically designed for trampoline athletes.
It's true.
So if you're like
trampoline athletes like you,
yes, exactly. I'm somewhere between a professional and a weekend warrior when it comes to the trampoline workouts, but still, the lemon almond cheesecake is the one that if you're really
community.
Well, I feel like if you're really looking to just perfect your craft, it's the perfect way to settle down after really just
the only thing holding you back is inadequate protein bars.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's really just Built Bar not sending. I mean, they're very generous, but I need even more. If they could send me even more, I would be representing this country very soon. But again, you want to get to them. So BuiltBar.com, promo code LOCKED15. You get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for the first 15% off. BuiltBar.com.
Locked On Lakers also brought to you by Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season, it's in full swing. Trampoline season, it's in full swing.
Yes, it is.
Bounce, I believe, is really the better way to put that. Get all your latest all your latest nudes. What? Get all your latest news, odds, and info for your sporting needs. And before the next pitch, head over to Bet Online on your laptop or mobile device. Check out all the information that you need. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. This is your chance to get in on the game as teams prep for their runs or their bounces to the playoffs. Head to the website, use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use the promo code Locked On. Again, 50% off bonus when you use on your first deposit when you use the promo code Locked On. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts.
Bet the over on the nude, Brian.
For all of your nudes, I was just thrown off because every once in a while, I've been around a lot of special athletes, Andy. Mm-hmm. But every once in a while, when you talk about the trampoline thing, I put it out of my mind normally because I can't do the show otherwise. It's too hard.
I know. I mean, it's got to be pretty impressive. And like a little bit, it's intimidating. I'm sure in a lot of ways it makes you feel like you settled in life.
Deeply inadequate. There's
right.
No
I mean, there was a lot that you could have done with your life. And every time you think about, maybe I'm on the right track, I'm doing some good things. Mm-hmm. You see a video, that's gone viral of me jumping on that trampoline.
He's still bouncing. Yeah. There he goes.
Yeah. I mean, if I just get the right combination of Built bars and maybe just a good break, I could be going to the equivalent of the trampoline championships. A reminder today on the road to the finals.
The trampoline
playoffs coverage brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. And at 2.6 carbs, 95 calories, we can all enjoy the games a little more this season.
Andy, the only tramps I'm interested in are the ones who hitch rides on trains.
Wow.
Do they still do that?
They may, but nobody calls them tramps. Not since the heyday of Charlie Chaplin do I think they were referred to that way.
But that's when baseball was 2 words. All right, so we were talking about...
I thought you were traveling down a very misogynistic road there. What the hell are you
do they prefer hobo? Is that the preferred term? Anywho, it's the off season. So what is interesting about THT? I put him at 3rd in that list, but there is nobody, I think, available to the Lakers that they can sign, that they can, certainly within sort of in-house, so to speak, that has the potential to transform kind of the championship window that we talk about with this team as much as he does. Because if he becomes a legitimate, I'm not even talking about star, all-star, whatever, that would be spectacular. If THT becomes a legitimate high-end rotation guy, high-end starter, all-star adjacent, whatever it is, that makes it so. I mean, all of a sudden, that's found money. I mean, all the other stuff that the Lakers can do, all the other players, stars that they have, draft picks, role players, guys they can attract, that it enhances what they have to a level that nobody else has the potential to do. I'm not saying he's going to do it. I'm just saying he's the only guy there who could.
The comparison I've made, Brian, a few times is the leap that Andrew Bynum took during his 3rd season. And I think there's actually some commonalities between the two as we look ahead to Talen Horton-Tucker's 3rd season. Both entered the league, like we talked about before, extremely young. They were both considered projects of sorts, but with a lot of obvious potential. One was a lottery pick and the other one was drafted in the 2nd round. But still, they were both seen as guys that would take some time to get going, but that the organization really was very high on, even in their most raw stages. They both showed flashes during the first 2 seasons, and you could see them developing into a valuable NBA player, but they weren't there yet in terms of being able to contribute in a meaningful way to a true contender. And both of them, to a point you were making earlier, Brian, were really the only trade assets the Lakers had that teams around the league could be interested in ways that weren't as much about just balancing cap numbers. So, like, is THT poised for that type of leap with Bynum? Like, it's hard to...
Right. And I would argue he's not quite on the same level as a prospect as Bynum was.
Actually, I don't know, man. I went back and looked at Bynum's numbers for the first 2 years and the way he was being utilized, his minutes per game. They're closer than I think you might realize. Mm-hmm. But either way, though, it's difficult to definitively bet on a leap like that with THT. But at the same time, Bynum did not look poised for that same leap either. Yeah. And I say this as somebody who was very high on Bynum from basically minute 1 of his rookie year, but I thought it would take about year 5.
Right. It's not that people didn't think he was going to be good. It's that people didn't think he was going to be good yet.
Right. But I mean, remember, Kobe that offseason said ship his ass to New Jersey for Jason Kidd. So I don't think anybody in the organization thought it was coming that season. That's like the pie in the sky version of what the organization hopes happened with THT. But if he can be somewhere between what we saw this season, which at times those flashes were really
impressive.
impressive.
Let's do that. Let's talk about it, because like the potential that you're talking about is why, and we'll get into it a little bit more. THT's contract. The challenge in signing THT is if some team thinks that he really is going to become a star caliber player, they can essentially backload his contract and make it very difficult for the Lakers to match, without getting too deep into the sort of arcane salary cap stuff. That's basically the dilemma. How do you think he played? Because there was a stretch at the beginning of the year, especially, where people were like, oh crap, he's playing way too well. He's absolutely going to get some sort of poison pill deal. Somebody's going to steal him away from the Lakers. There's no way they can afford. I don't think he kept up that momentum. He did hit a little bit of a wall. The league adjusted, and they started getting more seriously and stuff like that. How would you evaluate the way he played over the course of the entire year?
Yeah, I was looking through some of his numbers, and if you look at his percentages in terms of shooting, from the field, they're down overall from what he did his rookie year. And, granted in a much smaller sample size, but pretty much everywhere around the court, where they're talking about at the rim, whatever, they're down some. And I think it's reflective of what you're saying. He's on scouting reports more. Teams are paying more attention to him.
Right. It's not just garbage time.
Right. It's easier for experienced coaches to make adjustments for him than it is for a young player to adjust to those adjustments. One thing, though, that I really did like looking at THT's numbers is his assists almost doubled per 36, while his turnovers stayed basically the same from last season. Like they're a bit higher than you'd want, but he's young. Like it's fine. But he had more playmaking responsibility and didn't get crazy wild over it. And that to me was a good sign.
There were times when he was really used as a primary ball handler for the Lakers. He had a lot more responsibility. One of the upsides, I think, of this season was, to all the injuries, is that his development was accelerated, his responsibility was accelerated. He played far higher leverage minutes more consistently this year than he did as a rookie. Even some of the playoff minutes notwithstanding. But the eyeball tests and analytics and all that stuff, he sure looks like a guy who at the very least can be a legit NBA scorer.
Yeah, he could get I was going to say, he can sometimes get tunnel vision as a scorer, and I think he needs to add more dimension to the way he scores, because he starts to become, I think, predictable in terms of the way that you look to defend him.
He needs a better jumper,
right,
at every stage along on the way to the basket. He needs a better mid-range jumper. He needs a better 3-pointer. All that stuff.
And to his credit, actually, I remember at his exit interview, I asked THT about what it was like for him to basically have the game slow down a bit, but then in turn, recognize the way teams are defending him. And he said, like, he realized they were always defending me to go to the basket. So at times he was able to counter that. At times he wasn't as successful, but either way, he's learning. And I do think as a playmaker, he was not nearly as tunnel visioned, or I think at times out of control, as he could be as a scorer. And then defensively, there's a lot of potential there. And one thing I really liked about him is the effort is there as well. I mean, he can be a liability. I mean, I will go out on a limb and say on his scouting report, it just has in huge capital letters, back cut him. Right. Like just back cut. Yeah. Like, if he is guarding you off ball move, he won't find you. I mean, he would lose guys constantly, whether you're talking about with rotations or just he's supposed to be keeping track of somebody he doesn't.
NBA defense is really, really hard.
But he's not. But the thing is, though, he's not indifferent to defense.
I would agree.
He just has a lot to learn.
And who was it? Who we were talking to that where we asked that question about Kuzma as a template, not for career path, but just as defensive improvement. Like I forget which show that was, but and I think that is a reasonable thing, because Kuz, who was awful, when he came to the league defensively, just awful. has improved a great deal in part because he cared. He's got some of the physical tools that you need, and there's certain things he's not great at, but he cares and he tries, and a willingness to learn how to do it is important. So if THT becomes an average defender and an above average offensive player, again, it's found money for the Lakers. The enthusiasm, people love to make fun of Lakers fans, and I get it and all that stuff. The enthusiasm that Lakers fans have for THT is legit, because when he would play once or twice a game, when he would have extended minutes, similar, like you said, to Andrew Bynum, once or twice a game, when he would have extended minutes, you go like, oh, that's not something a 20-year-old does.
Actually, it's funny. I'd never thought about this comparison before, but in terms of rookie commonalities between Bynum and THT, they both had these like definitive, moments as rookies, or when they were really tested. With Bynum, it was that matchup he had against Shaq. Right. Remember when both Chris Mim and Kwame Brown got into foul trouble, and Phil Jackson very reluctantly put Bynum out there, and he was matched up against Shaq. Shaq posterized him in a way that literally it felt like you were watching the roof. It felt like you were watching the roof.
It was almost child abuse.
Yeah, it was like watching the roof collapse on a puppy or something. Like it was almost horrific to see play out in front of you. Like Bynum almost just crumbled, literally crumbled because of the force of this. Next trip down, Kobe fed him, and I think fed him intentionally, because I think he wanted to see how Drew would specifically react to this. And then Drew did the spin move, had that dunk, totally faked Shaq out, got really excited, gave Shaq a bit of an elbow. Shaq retaliated with that forearm shiver. But that was a testing moment for Bynum, and he passed really well. THT in the playoffs last year, unexpectedly, got that run either against Portland or Houston. I don't remember which one, but nobody really expected it, and he played really well. So I think that's another commonality between those guys, if you want to think about Bynum's path and what could be there with THT.
Let's save the gimmickry, the NBA gimmickry, either for tomorrow's show or perhaps for the YouTube channel, Locked On Lakers on YouTube, where you can go get some exclusive content there. So we'll do that. I do want to let everybody know a hobo, as defined by Wikipedia, is a migrant worker or homeless vagrant, especially one who is impoverished. The term originated in the western, probably northwestern U.S. around 1890. Unlike a tramp who only works when forced to, I guess we're tramps in that regard, and a bum.
Are we all tramps, really?
I don't know. Or a bum who does not work at all. A hobo is a traveling worker. So let's not degrade the work ethic of hobos, I guess. Hobos are traveling workers. Tramps only work when forced to, and bums don't work at all. There you go. I feel like we all learned something. I did not know that either. I'm kind of excited by that. That is courtesy of Wikipedia. All right. Again, Locked On Lakers on YouTube, Spotify Green Room, 11 o'clock this week on Friday, 11 o'clock Pacific. Make sure you send us notes. Cam Brothers on Twitter, KamenetskyBrothers@gmail.com. All that stuff. Leave a 5-star review on iTunes. However you want to do it. We'll see you next time.